People are on the path of spirituality or truth or whatever they might be investigating at the time. But in reality, most of what we see online is just misleading all of us. And it's been that way for a long time. Way back in the 80s, I used to read a lot of metaphysical stuff and whatever they had out. And I was reading it and I was kind of getting excited about a lot of things that were out there. But once I found out that some of the stuff was not even realistic over the years, I said, well, I'm not going to read most of this stuff. There was a couple of the books that I found really good because the people were speaking from truth, and I utilized that information. But most of the information out there I discounted because it was just pure crap. And there's a large movement, a very large movement right now that is pushing a false narrative. And the reason being is if they put enough of that misinformation out there, and enough people were going to buy into it because they're not going to have anything to really rely on in personal experiences. So they're going to rely on this information and they're going to kind of go by it thinking that's the way it is. When if you control the data, if large corporations and people control the data, then eventually everybody is going to pretty much buy into it, except for a small percentage of people that actually have these experiences. And then on the other side of the coin, there's going to be people who are having NDEs or other experiences, and they're going to buy into those experiences because they've had maybe one or two of them or a couple of them. And since they're the type of an individual that just takes everything at the surface level, where if they have an NDE and everything's great, everybody's happy, and they get to spend all this time with their family, and then they come back and they believe they have it all down pat. Well, that's not the way things are most of the time. So without having experiences over and over and over again with an open mind and questioning things, then you're going to just basically fall back into the same hole. And that's what a lot of people do. So when you're seeing a lot of these NDE stories, either people doing this on purpose because they're going to sell you on the snake oil, or the people that don't really know and understand. They're the type of people that just, they have an experience and they base their whole life on it, and without questioning anything. Now, I'm just going by the experience that I have, because when I spend the time doing it, I just look at it as an experience, and then over years I spend that time looking at it and questioning it. And over hundreds of experiences, I have some data that I can rely on in order for me to understand what's going on around me. Most people aren't going to put in that much effort, or they just say, hey, this looks good, this sounds good, so I'm going to go with it because it supports what I believe that I want. When in reality, if you buy into something that you just want to hear, it's going to continue feeding you what you want to hear without any real truth in the results. But I've steered clear of a lot of these paths, because when you begin to go down a path, the pathways old times will branch off. And there might be an unlimited amount of pathways that you could follow. Some are dead ends. Some paths will go ahead and delve into another path that's already there. So I've gone down several paths in my life, and I've decided there's a lot of things to follow, and there's a lot of paths available. But in the reality of things and the reality of the situation we're in right now, I have to look at what's happening with us physically. Because in the reality of our current situation, if we don't decide to bear down and straighten out what's happening in this three-dimensional physical world, then it won't matter what our spirit world activity is going to do. Because if you're a prisoner during the day and during most of your life, then your spiritual side is going to suffer as well. So I believe once we deal with what we're dealing with right now and fix it, without that, the spiritual side is not going to matter. And the reason why is what most of us see is part of the illusion. It pushes the agenda of what's happening here. A lot of people don't see in our physical life all these problems, or they see them, but they won't accept them. We have the high pricing. Well, our insurance is more, the gas is more. A lot of our general freedoms are being erased. More wars, more spending by our governments and corporations. What they're doing is they're buying up and controlling. And as we move along the same path that we're at, it's going to finally get to a point where our freedoms are going to be eliminated. Now, it seems to some people that they don't see that point. But if you look ahead at how things are happening now, then you will see easily that that is occurring. And I'm not talking about one representative or one set of representatives over another. It's all heading the same direction no matter who represents us. The only way we're going to get out of things is to represent ourselves and work together. But if we allow things to happen in our life and we don't do anything about it, it's just like having a relationship. If you don't foster the relationship, eventually it's going to fall apart. And that's where we're at. So I have to take a break at some place within my life to address, because I have to be here every day just like you do. We all have to be here right now and tomorrow and the next day and the next day. And if we don't take care of what's happening in the here and now, it won't matter, because at some point, even if spiritually you progress to a much higher level, which takes time, you still have to be back here every day. Now, the whole point of the matter for me is to getting this system straightened out to where we don't have a physical issue anymore. We can leave this whole realm, leave this whole prison and the prison yard. But I haven't developed a systematic approach to that for everyone. Now, I've openly showed everybody how to prepare yourself for that. Now, you can live your physical life and prepare yourself for that, because it's part of your life. But what I'm saying is following, how the pyramids were built and all these sort of things, they're great. They're great distractions. They're great shiny objects. But in the end, even if you discovered how that happened, what is that going to do for your life? What is that going to do for you? Because at some point, you won't have the freedom to investigate anything, because you'd be too busy supporting a system of control. Now, whether you agree or not, things are still going to happen. And whether you want to look or not, things are still going to occur. Out of our control unless we accept the control and take over. Now, when I say leaving the game and conscious control of yourself, those are major hurdles in our life that we need to be successful with. And if we don't become successful in controlling our own lives, then it's not going to work on a global scale. So for me, personally, I have to really ramp up my control of my own self And that's what everybody needs to do. I mean, having a super focus on our spiritual self when most of it is going to be misinformation, then you are setting yourself backwards. So understanding life, the way things really are versus the way things are presented to you, are very confusing. Especially when you see something and you think, well, yeah, I understand how it is because I've seen it. But that doesn't mean it's the way it is. Because we have so much illusion within the system that we live in, it's really hard to contemplate what is really happening with you. So when I try to explain things, a lot of times it doesn't transfer properly because we're at two different stages. My perspective is going to be different from your perspective, no matter what we look at, because we're standing in two different places and our experiences are based upon different aspects of life. So as we move along, we have to realize, number one, our physical selves are within a vast turmoil at the moment. They've been that way for a long time. A lot of people don't notice them. And our spiritual selves are actually in that same type of turmoil, yet we don't understand. A lot of our pathways have been blocked or stunted so that we can't access a lot of that information. I've noticed it, and I'm sure other people notice it as well. And it's for a reason. So that we stay highly focused within the physical world. But when I say highly focused in the physical world, it doesn't mean that I'm going to be involved in all these shiny objects. It means that I prepare myself more carefully and I spend more time preparing myself. My preparing myself means I become more consciously aware of what's happening. I look around, I see the big picture. I spend a lot of time doing that. So at night when I go to sleep, I become more consciously aware of my situation so that I'm not falling for a lot of the dream information. But my main thing is remaining lucid within my life. And as you're doing that, it cuts out a lot of the, I would say, litter that's in our life, whether it's the drama or whether it's the misinformation. So we have to stay focused on what's going on with us and see everything around us for what it really is. Seeing things for what it really is very important because that shows us how elementary we need to be within our life and how much we can actually cut out of our life that's complete nonsense. So I wanted to add this today because I wanted to bring forward the importance of where we are and what we need to do, because it gets overshadowed very easily by out of all the outside chatter and information that is constantly flowing our way, as well as all the roadblocks and all the distractions that we experience on a daily basis.